In a world filled with podcasts, one podcast dares to go where no other church podcast has gone before. When other church podcasts might play it safe and stick to topics like testimonies, ministry moments, and topics of theological interest. On this episode of the Deeply Devoted Podcast, we're going to the movies. You're listening to episode 46 of the Deeply Devoted Podcast, a ministry of the E-Free Church of Bemidji, Minnesota. This week on the podcast, Pastor Eric and guests Dan Evans and Neil Hall share their recent movie experiences and discuss how good stories can point us to the gospel. Grab your popcorn and get ready for episode 46, The Magic of the Movies.
That's right, folks. This is episode 46. You are listening to the Deeply Devoted Podcast. My name is Eric Nygren. I'm one of the pastors here on staff at E-Free Bemidji. And folks, this past week, I did something that I haven't done in a very long time. Actually went to the movie theater, something I haven't done for a while, to go see, well, of course, to go see a movie. In fact, I saw two movies in the same day, back to back. And I was just reminded of the simple joy of eating popcorn and watching a summer blockbuster. So I had this idea to talk about movies. And with me today in the Deeply Devoted Podcast studio are Neil Hall and a returning guest, Dan Evans.
Howdy.
We thought it might be fun to do a little bit of a movie review here, didn't we? And this needs to be spoiler-free, guys, so no giving anything away. But we also want to talk about storytelling in general and how stories can sometimes point us to the truth of the gospel. So, Neil, Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, Dan is one of two now returning guests, and we'll see if he gets invited back for a third time if he behaves himself today.
I was going to say, are we that low on people, or?
Well, you got to make. We're coming up on a year here, so we got to make it around the track.
Yeah,
one
true.
time. No, but
true.
we got a lot of folks. First of all, I feel like it is necessary for me to just offer a word of thanks to Dan's wife Carissa and to Neil's wife Serena for letting these guys kind of geek out with me a little bit, both today in this episode and when we went to the movies. What was it? Was it last week?
It was a week ago.
Yeah. Okay.
It was funny because today at work I was like, hey, I'm leaving a little early today. And they're like, oh, you going to the movies again? I was like, oh, okay. I can't do that 2 weeks in a row.
No. So we won't make this a habit. But ladies, thank you. We owe you one. I guess maybe some free babysitting or something like that. You guys can just send your kids over to my house and we'll give you guys a night out or something like that.
Sounds good.
Ooh,
Serena,
okay.
I'm watching this episode.
It is. It's on tape. Yeah, right. Well, we got to know Dan back in episode 14, Dan, and This is 46, so a little while ago.
Man.
I'll have to go back to the ratings and see where that one ranks in terms of listenership.
Oh, obviously high.
I'm sure in the top three, something like that.
Oh, for sure.
But instead, let's start by getting to know Neil a little bit. So, Neil, for our listeners, especially for our church family, would you mind just kind of introducing yourself? Tell us, what do we need to know about you?
So hi, I'm Neil. I've been attending this church for I think the last 7 years, give or take. Time
That sounds about
has
right.
disappeared since I graduated high school, which I was at 25, 5 years ago. Feels like a month ago.
Yeah.
Been a manager at Walmart for a very long period, including during high school, and been a follower of Jesus Christ since I was in about 7th grade. And I am a fairly new father still. My little girl should be turning 8 months here soon.
Yeah, a big world difference from 5 to 7 years ago, right?
Let's just say I was really close to not being able to go to the movies because I had to ask like 3 different people to watch Selah.
Okay. Well, you cashed in your chips, I guess. Maybe you get to do it again 6 months from now or something like that. So, Kind of off topic, but I thought since I had both of you guys in the room here, one of the things folks need to know about you guys is that the two of you have both served as our Wednesday night on-site life groups. And what I mean by that is we've got life groups that meet all over the place, but here at the church, at least last year, you guys led two of the groups that met here at the church while parents were at kids the kids were at kids club, youth group, things like that, and maybe parents stuck around. Dan, we'll start with you. What do you enjoy most about leading a life group?
The diversity and the relationships, right? So, excuse me, we've got people who have kids who are in the kidsmen, right? And that's wonderful. And then we've got folks who their kids are gone. We've got grandparents who bring their kids every once in a while who join our group. So you get to hear a lot of different life stories when it comes to it. And a lot of that with those questions that come up each week, you have a totally different viewpoint. I could think of a question one way and then somebody else has it a different way. And I think I don't know about you, Neil, that's kind of my favorite part.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Yeah, it's funny because I think, what have you been doing it 2-3 years, Dan, on that kind of the Wednesday night, or maybe 4? I've lost track of time.
Yeah, it's
but
been
more,
at least
more
3
than
or 4.
one.
Yeah.
And I when we thought about the idea, we sort of assumed, well, everyone was going to be parents of little kids at Kids Club, and you're right. It's even been people who just Wednesday night was a better night for them, and they don't have any kids here. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks for doing that, and we'll see if maybe we can get you to do that at least one more year. But Neil, you and Serena hosted the other on-site Wednesday group.
Sure did.
Really for the first time last year. What was one of your big takeaways from that experience?
So kind of like Dan said, one of the big things that's such a blessing is just hearing other people's mindsets on certain like passages and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just so nice being able to like dwell in like the word and stuff like that. I know at home, especially with the new baby, sometimes it was really hard to like even do our devotionals at night and stuff.
Yeah.
And there was many Wednesdays where it was like, oh, we got to go to life group. And then we got there, and after about 5 minutes is like, so glad we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
this is what you needed that week.
Yep.
Yep.
So like, just nice to be with everyone and, connecting with Jesus. I mean, he's our joy. He's our happiness.
Yeah.
And that really gets brought in. So even though sometimes it felt like a chore, once I stepped foot in the building, it was a blessing.
Yeah.
It was not a chore at all.
Yes. I totally resonate with that. I mean, just even in different aspects of, whether it's a life group or coming to Second Sunday prayer or even Sunday morning sometimes, your heart's not fully in it.
Right.
You're tired. You're maybe had a busy week or weekend or something like that. But yeah, if you can just kind of get over that initial inertia and get there, it is so worth it. It is so worth it. Yeah. So thanks, Neil, and thanks, Serena, for being a part of that.
I also do want to add, the nice thing about my life group is it was a bit smaller, which is actually really nice for a couple people that wanted a little bit more of that interpersonal connection. I think Dan's group got up to like 20 people on certain Wednesdays.
Yep,
and we
that
did
happened.
join them quite a bit. I covered for Dan and Dan covered for me when stuff came up. But I do know we had a couple people come that were just so joyful that they could just say what they needed to and not worry about like talking a little too much or anything.
Yeah. It was a good environment for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dan's group met in the conference room, and you get 20 people in there. It's about 125 degrees.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's a good weight loss program.
So not by design, but that's what we do. So, well, one of the things we do often in life groups, I think of this when I'm writing my life group questions. I think Pastor Jerry does something similar. Usually we start out with some kind of an icebreaker question. Sometimes it's a little bit silly. It's not quite diving into the passage yet. So I was kind of thinking of this icebreaker question for you two life group leaders, really to get this conversation going, guys. What was the first movie that you remember seeing in the theater?
I know for me, it was The Lion King. I don't remember too much besides for being scared.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
especially of
Sure.
Scar, and you know when Mufasa gets trampled by the wildebeest. Like I just remember being scared of that part for the longest time. But yeah, mine was Lion King.
Okay.
So-
Do you remember how old you must have been? I mean, we can do the math. When,
It was probably 3, 4,
okay.
something like
Yeah.
that. Because
All right.
what, it came out in 93 ish. Let's look.
Yeah, usually I'm pretty good about guessing when movies came out, but I'm not great on the animated ones.
Yep, 94. So I was
94, okay.
4 or 5
Okay.
years old.
All right. That
Oh.
makes me feel old. Okay.
I wasn't even born yet.
Yeah. Neil, what about you? Like the first movie theater experience that you remember, the first movie that you remember seeing in the theater?
So I know for a fact it wasn't my first, but the first one that comes to mind
Yeah.
is Ice Age: Dawn of the Dinosaurs, and it was in 3D with like
Oh.
the newer ones, not like the blue and red. And I still wonder why every movie isn't like big deal 3D. Like there's a couple that come out, and for like the first week, it's huge. I know it gives some people headaches, but I love the 3D experience.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe it's just because I wear glasses or something like that. I don't love it. There have been some good ones over the years that do a better job.
There
at
are
it.
very tacky ones too
Right,
that looks,
right.
hey, look what we can do, instead of like just kind of being a feature. I like when it's a bonus, not a hey, look what we did while we were filming type thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it can be kind of an over exaggeration of the CGI and things
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
I have 2 things.
Oh.
One, no 3D. 2, I view you as like 5 years old now. You know,
That's-
saying 3D movies when you were a kid. Like,
Right.
Oh man.
Well, So
Again, I wasn't even born by the time you saw Lion King, so it does add up.
yeah. So here's where it gets worse. My most vivid, like first movie theater memory. I wish it was Star Wars, but I don't think it was. It was Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And please, Dan, don't look up what year that came out because that'll give it away.
no comment.
But I vividly remember going to a movie theater in the mall, and I think my dad was with me, and it was the same kind of thing. You know, when you're however old you would have been there, I guess I would have been about 5, something like that. And it was just an experience. Like, I don't know if I can remember the movie, but I remember the experience. And I think that's
Yeah,
a big part of it
Yep.
is the experience of going to the movies. And that's what we want to kind of talk about a little bit here on this episode. We're talking about movies. What did you look up, Dion? Okay. I thought you were going to out me on my movie time there. We're talking
No.
about movies on the podcast here. And I first of all, I think just for our listeners, I want to kind of give just a little bit of a disclaimer. Look, in a church of our size, I'm sure that there are a variety of people who have various convictions, various opinions regarding all kinds of pop cultural things, movies, books, and music. And as I was thinking about this, you know, it really did make me think about, maybe you guys remember our Romans sermon series. We came to Romans 14. We talked about disputable matters. Maybe you guys remember talking about that in life groups, some of those
Yep.
questions.
It is one of the sermons I always remember most, because I think if people remember and think about disputable matters, it really grows respect for the individual.
Yes.
Because some people are like Harry Potter, absolutely not in our family, and other people are like, it's just a made up story.
Right.
But if you keep in mind like the 10 Commandments and all that, and what Jesus calls us for, and let people kind of decide on their own stuff, the other stuff, I think it really grows respect between the individual. Because I've seen like some people like fight over like silly things like a PG-13 movie.
Exactly. And so hopefully I don't want to like pour gasoline on that fire at all by talking about movies today. And I would just say, you know, as Christians, we just need to always read or view or listen with discernment. You guys are parents of young children. As your kids get older, you're going to be making decisions on whether you bring them to the theater or you let them watch this or read this or listen to this. I will say, you know, we found as a family, there are just really good resources out there and to take advantage of them. You know, designed for parents. There's a service called Common Sense Media. I think even the IMDb website and app does have like a parent's guide section. So even if you don't have children, if you're trying to discern should I watch this? Should I read this? Should I listen to this? There are resources out there that help you think through that, as we sort of put it through that disputable matters lens. But, well, earlier this summer, so I don't even remember when it was, Dan, but at some point, I had mentioned to you, I keep seeing these trailers or buzz about the new Superman movie and the Fantastic Four. And really, both of these movies were released just this last month in July. Probably by design. It's that big summer blockbuster. There's a ton of hype leading up to these two movies. Dan, would you consider yourself to be a fan of the superhero genre?
If I said anything other than yes, I'd be lying.
Okay.
It's, very much so. I could watch the Marvel movies, for instance, on repeat. I've got a Captain America tattoo on my shoulder.
Uh-oh.
So, I'd
So you're a
say
fan.
a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit.
Well, so what led you into that? How far back does it go?
Years.
Okay.
Yeah. Years, as far as I can remember.
Sure.
It was always something I was drawn to.
Yeah. Neil, what about you? Do these superhero stories, do they appeal to you? Do you have a favorite? Any of those?
Absolutely love them. Never really read the comics or anything, but I would be lying if I didn't maybe watch a lot of YouTube with backstories explained and this and that. Marvel, DC, there's even a couple other that aren't the big two that I kind of follow. I love nerdy comic stuff so much.
Yeah. Me too. I mean, I go back. I mean, I do remember reading comic books back in the day. Again, I can date myself a little bit. I remember not only some of the movies were few and far between when I was a kid, superhero movies, but there were a few TV shows that were kind of in that theme as well. And I just loved it. I mean, I was one of those kids that, my mom sewed a, like a Superman cape for me and things like that. And you just play pretend when you're a kid. And there's something about being a superhero or kind of thinking through that a little bit. In fact, I'm old enough to remember that when the Superman movies starring Christopher Reeve were the blockbuster films of the day. And I was just kind of thinking about that, this Superman, as we talk about kind of this film that came out this summer, Superman is a character that goes way back. I mean, it is not just back to the 70s and 80s and Christopher Reeve. Superman first appeared in a comic book in 1938. In fact, if you have that, Action One comic, if somebody's got that, I mean, it's worth millions and millions
that's
of
a
dollars.
pretty penny.
Yeah, right. But I mean, here's my question, guys. Why do you think Superman has been such an iconic character for 90 years?
Go ahead.
The one thing I thought of was he's always that symbol of hope.
Yeah.
For everybody, right?
Yeah.
It's that optimism in this times of uncertainty. And it's that morality aspect of it too, right?
Yeah.
So that those were the few things that popped into my head when I thought of that.
Yep. Yeah, with most people are Batman fans too, but with Superman, he's always the Boy Scout. Like, he always does the right thing and tries to save the most lives. And this should be spoiler free. I'm pretty sure it's in the trailer. He saves a chipmunk or a squirrel, in the trailer,
right?
Like an insignificant animal,
Yeah.
and like he's saving the day.
Right. Yeah, I think there's something to that, and we can kind of overanalyze it, but I do think that's interesting, especially in, the last 15, 20 years of superhero movies. A big thing is kind of the darker genre and in their conflicted past and their conflicted origins and things like that. And that's never been true of Superman. He's always just been the good guy. He's always been, what was the slogan, truth, justice, and the American way. And that's never changed. And I think, without giving anything away, I think that was brought out well in this recent film. So with that, guys, without any spoilers, what did you think of the new Superman film?
I thought it was better than the Fantastic Four, in my opinion.
Okay.
I know you guys left the theater as more Fantastic Four fans, being like, that one was a bit better. But I think this movie did Superman right. I mean, he was the Boy Scout, and even the villain was just so fun to watch. I mean, Superman is this powerhouse that can either need a god level threat or a green rock, granted.
Yeah.
But it was so fun to just kind of watch him do his best and do what he needed to do, and then having this huge brainiac just going after him and kind of kicking him in the legs. And even though like Lex couldn't throw a fist, he didn't need to.
Yeah.
And their dynamic was fun the entire movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I mean, just even that kind of iconic character, not just the hero, but the villain that kind of is the mirror image or whatever, his nemesis. Yeah. Dan, what'd you think?
It was nice because it felt refreshing having a new version of it, but it brought so many pieces of like the classics back to it that it was just that fun mashup. And it really it dug into the values again of what Superman is. So it was fun. There was, a lot of beating people up, which is always a great Superman movie. But, it always talked about that hope, the courage, compassion, like you said about that squirrel. So yeah, I mean, I definitely thought it was one of the better Supermans.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been plenty of good ones, but there's also not been some great ones.
That's right.
And
it's been done a number of times.
Oh
yes.
yeah. Yep.
Some better.
It's
some
kind of one
worse.
of those things of, they're doing Superman again. Okay. But no, it was enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you can kind of overanalyze it a little bit, but to think about, certainly the screenwriter, the director, had a message that they wanted to communicate. And I think this one was intended to be very positive.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Whether you want to call it family friendly or hopeful or and not in a real kind of naive way. It wasn't a silly nice guy kind of thing. But I did find it funny that throughout the movie, just when Superman would use a choice word, it was always like "geesh" or or "darn" or something like that, and of course not the more colorful language. And it was kind of accentuated, but to show that he would not use those more colorful words. He was really under pressure if he was going to say one of those ones that he did. So anyway, that was a little thing like that. But now my two superheroes when I was growing up, my two favorites were Spider-Man and the Incredible Hulk, and I loved. I mean, they were. If I could call them my superhero heroes, they were. Part of it was there was a TV show of both of them. Yeah, not real good quality, but they were memorable. And,
well, I mean, you're describing Nikolai to a T. I mean, it's Spider-Man and the Hulk. That's what's in his bed at night and what he plays with all the time. And
it's funny. I mean, he Spider-Man goes back a ways too, and I think kids everywhere are going to continue as long as there are Spider-Man TV shows and movies and comics. They're going to follow it, but. And so I paged through those comics, and just much like what we were talking about, you were talking about, Neil, like Lex Luthor is the villain to Superman. If I had to pick a favorite comic book villain, it would have to be Dr. Doom. Which now we're getting into the nerdy, and I hope we haven't lost all of our listeners here yet. But I was thrilled to hear the rumor that Dr. Doom would be entering the Marvel Cinematic Universe not till next year, 2026. And if you know anything about Dr. Doom, he appeared very early in the Fantastic Four series of comics. And that's going to lead us right here into this other blockbuster, Fantastic Four First Steps. Now, much like some of the Superman movies, up to this point, some of the Fantastic Four films have been more like missteps along the way. But guys, what'd you think of this version? Again, no spoilers, please, but what was your takeaway from the Fantastic Four?
I was pleasantly surprised. Like what you just said, there's been missteps up until now. And this was very good. I walked away, like I said, pleasantly surprised. It felt like they're finally getting that story, getting the actors, like the whole 9 yards. It worked.
Yeah.
I didn't walk away going, oh boy, here we go again.
Yeah.
Like what was it, 2015 when they had the young kids doing it or whatever, and I just kind of scratched my head in that one. But no, I thought this one definitely delivered a lot better.
Yeah. Neil, what was your take?
Very fun. I really The plot was fantastic.
No pun
I
intended.
did miss a little bit of action throughout of it,
Yeah,
but the
yeah.
family dynamic was there. And when you hear Fantastic Four, you almost always hear the tag Marvel's First Family.
Yeah.
And it felt like a family movie.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? And I think that was the theme that really came across. Not in an overpowering way. And again, without giving too much away, family clearly was the theme, which is great in 2025 to have a movie about family and the importance of family. Even if it's a superhero family, there's something about that. Yeah,
It's true. So he said his favorite villain, Neil.
I have a couple, and I'm more of a Marvel fan than I am DC, but I really like Darkseid. Because it makes
a little bit of a deep cut.
Yeah, it is.
It makes the DC heroes think and really like plan out because he's kind of the Thanos of DC. And when you again have Superman, a guy that needs an incredible threat or a Green Rock, then I mean when you pair him up with a villain that he can't just fight his way through and he needs the whole team, and you see everyone using their powers and their brains in fun, interesting ways, and he's normally connected with a lot of like planning, and he's the final fight, but he makes them fight a million other things first.
Dan, that must mean that you have a favorite villain.
You know, I always go back to Magneto,
Okay.
you know, with the X-Men. But I've always been an Ian McKellen fan. So, you know, to me, like he's just always been that like perfect actor for it.
Yeah.
So, you know, seeing him in that and other movies, it just works.
He's rumored to be coming back.
Oh, it's
even
not
though
rumored.
He's
It's-
approaching.
Oh yeah,
His
He's
name
almost
is on
90
there.
years old, I think. So
Well, him and Patrick
Yeah.
Stewart.
So I'll take it. Well, I'm thinking about these, and you know, rather than just kind of unpack the films a little bit, I was thinking, you know, a good preacher knows how to use illustrations well in a sermon, and you know, every once in a while, we'll think of a scene from a movie or a famous movie line, and it kind of works its way into a message. Hopefully to illustrate the point, not just to say something funny or something kind of a crowd pleaser, but of course that assumes that listeners of the sermon are going to catch that reference, or they'd be familiar with the film. Guys, what do you think about these little snippets from pop culture and how they resonate with people as it relates to, say, illustrating a sermon point? Do you think that's helpful? Not helpful? What's your take on that?
I think it's super helpful. Granted, I do think you and Jerry might need to watch something else other than Star Wars every once in a while.
Yeah, that's probably true.
That just seems blasphemous.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I feel like it helps everyone kind of resonate with you guys, because sometimes there does, as an average church goer, just kind of feel like that little bit of like separation of these guys really know what they're talking about.
Sure.
And they're sometimes using kind of like older biblical words.
Yeah.
And when you guys talk about like your family lives or the stuff you're interested in, it's kind of like helps that connection.
Okay.
And it kind of personally brings me into like the sermon a little bit, because it's that kind of intriguing point and just something a little different. But I think it's very fun, and I think it sometimes gets a laugh or some smiles. And just kind of like brings the audience or what do we call it? The congregation.
Yeah.
in
Yeah, we're talking about movies, so
Yeah,
audience.
hey, it
yeah,
works.
Right.
No, I think you're spot on, because, you know, a lot of people, you know, will view a pastor as, you know, oh yeah, they're the ones who are, you know, good and perfect and they don't mess up.
Yeah.
No, they're just like us. You know, they are doing the exact same things that we do. They are no different. So I like it when that happens.
Yeah. Bringing some of those in. Yeah, and I think, you know, for my own kind of preaching style, I don't ever want, I was kind of trained on the don't ever let the illustration outshine the sermon.
Yep.
You know, if after the message, everybody's, whether it's a personal story about myself or a movie reference or a book reference, you know, if that's what people are talking about after at the end of church and not the point of the message, then I did something wrong.
Right.
I'm not there to entertain or drop a funny joke or something like that. But if it illustrates, if it kind of captures the theme.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just a good connection. Like it might be kind of what they're thinking of after church, but maybe that helps them remember what it was in context too as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and so all of that, I think, really is a lead in to where I want to kind of take us next here. We could talk about movies all afternoon, but this really isn't a movie review podcast. Maybe we'll do another one of these someday. But, as fun as it is, what I want us to do is kind of focus on things that are a little bit deeper, focus on deepening our devotion to Jesus. And I think I can get us there. And here's how I want to get it. So, 1931, you got to go back to 1931, which was 7 years before Superman was on the scene, at least in the comic books. There's a story of three men who engaged in a late-night theological conversation. And this conversation, it really started on the topic of storytelling and myth. And eventually it led them to a discussion of the gospel. And in fact, as the kind of the recounting of this famous meeting of these three men, that this conversation eventually led one of them to faith in Jesus Christ. And you might not recognize the name Hugo Dyson, but I'm sure that you will know the names J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. And so Dyson and Tolkien were believers at the time, but C.S. Lewis was at this point still navigating the claims of Christianity. He was, I wouldn't say he was a full-blown atheist at this time, but he wasn't yet a believer, and he's still thinking about it. So I would assume that you guys are familiar with the Lord of the Rings series, the Chronicles of Narnia.
Oh, yeah.
So when were you introduced to those stories?
I still remember doing a book report on the Two Towers back in middle school.
Okay.
So, this was, definitely middle school was, I think, at least that time. And then Chronicles of Narnia was probably elementary school, somewhere similar.
So a little blasphemy. I don't think I watched the Lord of the Ring movies in their entirety. I think I saw the first movie like 3 times prior until about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And without the context of the books, I was fairly lost, especially in the last movie.
Yeah.
Like, where did this random king come from? I know, Dan. I know. And then actually with Narnia, absolutely love the movies, but it also wasn't until I was married that I fully connected the gospel aspect of it.
Yeah.
And I haven't read them either. It's on my list. My wife and I are finishing a series right now, and then we're going into Narnia. And I've been wanting to read it so badly, but I promised her I'd wait.
Yeah. And I would imagine someday the Narnia series, reading the Narnia series to your kids is so much fun.
Yep.
So much fun. But yeah, I mean, these guys, this is the origin of it. And so in this conversation between Hugo Dyson, J.R.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, it was a really significant conversation. And not long after it, C.S. Lewis wrote a letter to a friend, and this is how he describes it. He says, it was a really memorable talk. We began on metaphor and myth, and we continued on Christianity. And he describes it, he says, it's a good, long, satisfying talk in which I learned a lot, then discussed the difference between love and friendship, and then finally drifted back to poetry and books. And many scholars believe that it was just shortly after that conversation that C.S. Lewis, again, a former atheist, placed his faith in Christ. And later he would write another letter, and he said, how deep I am just now beginning to see, for I have just passed on from believing in God to definitely believing in Christ, in Christianity. I will try to explain this another time. My long night talk with Dyson and Tolkien had a good deal to do with it. And I just think that's fascinating. And that was the subject of their conversation. Now, in 1931, they weren't talking about superhero movies or Spider-Man comics or something, but they were talking about storytelling and myth, which is basically the same thing.
Yep.
And kind kind of history tells us that about a month after that late night conversation, Lewis would again write to this friend about the significance of that conversation and how it impacted his faith. And what I want to do here, I've got a book that is a collection of C.S. Lewis's letters, and I just want to read a passage here. It's a little bit longer, so bear with me here. But I think this will kind of tie in all that we're talking about here, guys. So C.S. Lewis says, and he's talking about his faith here. He says, what has been holding me back, at any rate for the last year or so, has not been so much a difficulty in believing as a difficulty in knowing what the doctrine meant. He says, you can't believe a thing while you are ignorant what the thing is. My puzzle was the whole doctrine of redemption. In what sense the life and death of Christ saved or opened salvation to the world. I could see how miraculous salvation might be necessary. One could see from ordinary experience how sin could get a man to such a point that he was bound to reach hell in this life unless something quite beyond were a mere natural help or effort stepped in. And I could well imagine a whole world being in the same state and similarly in need of a miracle. What I couldn't see was how the life and death of someone else, whoever he was, 2,000 years ago, could help us here and now, except insofar as his example helped us. In the example business, though true and important, is not Christianity. Right in the center of Christianity, in the Gospels and St. Paul, you keep on getting something quite different and very mysterious, expressed in those phrases I have so often ridiculed: propitiation, sacrifice, the blood of the Lamb. Expressions which I could only interpret in senses that seemed to me either silly or shocking. Now here is kind of the light bulb moment for him. He says, now what Dyson and Tolkien showed me was this, that if I met the idea of sacrifice in a pagan story, I didn't mind it at all. Again, that I met the idea of a God sacrificing himself to himself, the quotation opposite, and he quotes something from another book. He says, I liked it very much and was mysteriously moved by it. Again, that the idea of dying and reviving God similarly moved me, provided that I met it anywhere except in the Gospels. The reason was that in pagan stories, I was prepared to feel the myth as profound and suggestive of meanings beyond my grasp, even though I could not stay in cold prose what it meant. And then this is kind of the capstone here. He says, now the story of Christ is simply a true myth, a myth working on us in the same way as the others. But what this tremendous difference that it really happened. And one must be content to accept it in the same way, remembering that it is God's myth where the others are men's myth. I mean, what he's basically saying there is when he would read these stories, he loved this idea of sacrifice. It moved him, or even kind of this a God dying and rising again. You know, he would capture it, and it would just kind of capture his heart. But not so much in the Gospels. And then when Tolkien and Dyson kind of connected the dots for him and said, you know, all of those myths, all of those stories about sacrifice and dying and rising and resurrection, they are all pointing to the true myth. It was as if the light bulb went off, and that was one of the things that really was instrumental in his faith.
Yeah, it's bridging that gap between the faith and the storytelling, you know, that he was seeing.
It's similar to what we're talking about, sermon illustrations and things like that. But I mean, you think about this idea of true myth and how many of our stories, whether you're talking about a book, a movie, a play, has echoes of these true myths. And I wonder just how that strikes you guys, of that idea of true myth, just even that phrase there.
Yeah, it makes me think of the hero's journey, which we're taught in school, at least back in my day. Yeah, where you kind of have this like climbing arc, or actually it's a circle, and the hero, in this case Jesus, has humble beginnings, born from the Virgin Mary, normally has a rock bottom, the crucifixion. And then by the end, he's saved the day. And at the end, he's the only way to life.
Yes.
Like he's
Yeah.
our saving day.
And I know sometimes people can be troubled by hearing that and saying, well, Neil, are you just saying that the Jesus story is just another story? And I think what Lewis would say is it's not just another story. All those other stories are pointing to the true story.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He really, as you said, he really is the real hero's journey or whatever, and all these other hero's journey stories are pointing to that. I don't know, Dan, can you think of maybe other examples where you kind of see some of that or that stand out to you?
I was thinking the same thing, though, with that, pattern. You got that hero's rise. You've got the trials that they face. They sacrifice something, brings about that redemption or that restoration
Right.
of that character. Life is good.
Right.
And you see that in almost every single story.
Right.
You think of Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Lion King. I mean, go
Right.
back to my childhood. So, I mean, I think of it like that, but then, I think of how God has woven that truth into these creative fabrics where every time we respond to a great story like that, we're responding to a whisper of that greatest one.
Yeah.
And I really, it's so powerful when you think of it that way. Like it's everything, like you said, goes back to that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's just part of the great design. Like everyone likes connecting to a good hero.
Yeah.
And Jesus is the hero.
Yeah.
Or even like the true name of God, Yahweh, is actually pronounced with an inhale and an exhale. Like God has designed his creation to praise him, whether they know it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that what we're not saying is that every one of these stories is a Christian allegory. It's not in the same way that, like, as you were talking about Chronicles of Narnia,
Right.
Lewis wrote those intentionally to point us to the lion Aslan to be a Christ figure. Now, these other ones aren't necessarily trying to illustrate gospel principles, but I think what we're seeing is they can't help to illustrate some of these principles. Sometimes not very well, and they're imperfect in what they do. Not every movie about sacrifice is a noble story and things like that. But it's part of that element there. So I'm curious, guys, what about Superman and the Fantastic Four? If C.S. Lewis and Dyson and Tolkien were sitting in the theater watching Superman and the Fantastic Four, what do you think their takeaway would be? I mean, it's total speculation and daydream, but
could you imagine that conversation? Like, I think that'd be so fun to be a fly on the wall for something like that.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this because you and I had talked a little bit about this before the podcast.
Yeah.
I truly don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's hard to imagine because it's hard to picture what. I mean, it's not like they wouldn't have been familiar with movies. I mean, Lewis died in the 60s, Tolkien died in the 70s, so it's not as if the cinema was a foreign concept, but nothing like the CGI films that we have today. I mean, The Wizard of Oz was about as epic, or the Ten Commandments in terms of movie magic was probably about as epic as they witnessed. But
yeah, I mean, I would assume they would talk about that exact the fall and the need for the redemption. Those basic things that we were just talking about. The sacrifices, that hope rising. A chosen one, that savior figure.
Right.
All those different themes in the movies. That's what I could see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to think of it a little bit too, but every time I kind of thought of like, what would they think? My brain goes, Tolkien created his own language.
That's true.
I don't know what's going on in
right?
that guy's head.
I know it's so tough, and we've never met these people.
Yeah, right.
We see their work, we've read their work, we've watched movies based on their work. So I mean, you can imagine, but that's so tough at the same time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to imagine, and you're right, Neil. I wonder if not all of our movies are really great storytelling. The plot's kind of weak, and I wonder about somebody that wrote epic novels and invented his own language would say, boy, that was kind of a weak effort. But I think they would appreciate the storytelling side of it. And for me, I think that it is that concept that there's a glimmer of truth kind of in every story. Some don't get it all the way right, and I think that's just a helpful way for us to read fiction, watch movies, watch plays, and things like that. Again, not always try to say what was the Christian allegory there, but to say what was the redemptive principle that we saw in that. And I think that's great for things like family discussion and whatnot. So when you're watching The Lion King, what did you take away from this? Not that you have to have a big, deep dinner table conversation with your kids about it, but
although that could be entertaining with Bentley right now.
Yeah, I would. We'll get her on and get her take for the next one. So, all right, guys, we probably milked that for all it's worth in terms of movies. Any last takeaways on our big movie podcast review?
When are we doing a Star Wars one?
We could work on that. You would not have to twist my arm. I don't know we would get continued listenership if we keep doing this too many times. But
it also just kind of makes me think, going back to the Disputable Matters, take away the good if you can, but sometimes just try to keep in mind that this is just someone's fun hero fantasy or like someone's just project that they poured their heart into. And sometimes just have some fun. I mean, take the joy out of it.
Yeah. Which was really when we went to the movie theater. I mean, that was I felt like I just kept saying when people said, what did you think of it? I just had fun.
It was a blast.
I just had fun. And that's, again, it just kind of goes back to that experience. Maybe it's that kind of feeling of being in the movie theater as a kid again and eating popcorn and watching a big cinematic experience, but
and being with friends. I know you said that's your first movie theater experience in years. I know I haven't really left my house in the last 8 months. And Dan's got 3 kids. I mean, it was maybe a little bit harder on the wives, but it was fun to get out and just be with friends.
That's right.
Well, the crazy thing to me is these were 2 of the 4 movies I've actually seen in the past month at the theater.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it's been a very long time since we've actually had like good movies coming out too.
That you want to go see.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, like I went and saw Jurassic World, which don't get me started there. But I went and saw the Formula One movie, which, yes, do get me started. A lot of people, know me that way.
Dan's a Formula One fan. So,
But it was fun to get back to actually going to the movies, like you said. Now, paying for everything, that's a different story. I might have to take out a loan for some popcorn.
That's why you go on $5 Tuesday.
Oh, it's the best night for it.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, hey, guys, as we wrap up here, at the end of every one of our episodes, we do the same thing. I ask my guests this last question. May or may not be directly related to our topic at hand, but at our church, our mission statement is that we are becoming deeply devoted followers of Jesus together. And so I want to ask you guys briefly, what's one thing that you have been blessed by lately that is deepening your devotion to Jesus?
I would say for sure raising my daughter. She's chatting a little bit, not really saying words yet, but I know that she's listening, and Serena and I are praying for her and singing Christian songs to her. And at home, especially after a hard day of work, sometimes it's been hard to open the Bible. But I know with my daughter, it's a little bit more forefront of my mind because she's kind of that bundle of joy always coming home. And then I'm also very excited for this winter season because I really like doing sound. And although I have done it during the summer months with it being split in 2 again, and there's less people to volunteer, I'll probably be on the live stream a little bit more. And I like being here early, and I like being in the body, and I love doing sound. I love being a part of this church.
That's music to Dan's ears.
I was going to say, I've got a big smile on my face right now.
What if volunteers saying, I love to volunteer in the live stream rooms?
I haven't gotten the email yet, but I'm pretty sure Life Groups is probably around the corner too.
It's coming up. You're going to hear from me soon. Yeah.
Yep. I've got two, so similar. Just my kids, right? It's especially now with them talking so much. Chris and I were actually joking the other day. Bentley made a lot of just sounds at first instead of actually talking. We're like, "Gal, when is this girl gonna talk?" That's changed. She doesn't stop talking now. But we love it, especially when just out of nowhere she'll just come up and, "I love Jesus." And I'm like, "Oh, we're doing something right." It makes us so happy and just so incredibly blessed that, we've got a great church with Kidsmen and stuff that, she's growing up in and getting that love of Christ. Yeah. It's awesome. But also just a daily devotional. So I've got the Everyday Gospel daily devotional that I think we sold at beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And I've been going through that daily, and it's so awesome. Yeah. So I know you can find it. Do we still have some copies of that, Eric?
I don't know if we do.
I know you can find it on Amazon. Yeah. But I couldn't recommend that one enough.
Yeah. I think it's Paul Tripp is the author or the editor.
Paul David Tripp. It's quick, it's simple. I'm not saying that devotion should be quick. It's not like 2 minute done.
When you're a parent of young kids and you don't have the luxury of
at night, I'm exhausted. I just need that little pick me up, and there I go.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that definitely came across my mind.
Yeah.
So.
For me, it's funny. I think in the last episode I was mentioning a reference to one of the C.S. Lewis Chronicles of Narnia stories. And The Magician's Nephew. And after that, I thought, I have not read that in a bit. And so I picked it up and I read it and I tore through it. It's not a very long book and it's written for children. So, I tore through it in just a couple of days. But that is my absolute favorite of his books. And now I'm into, book 2, which is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And I know I'm going to tear through the series here. And it's just been a joy to read those. They're simple. They're children's books, but they never get boring. So that's just been a blessing to me. And then, C.S. Lewis was pretty explicit in his spiritual parallels in that one. Yeah. They're right on the surface, and you can get them pretty quick. So it was a really blessing. So, well, guys, this has been fun. I hope you were blessed by the epic movie trailer at the beginning as well. Thanks.
You had way too much fun building that.
Well, thanks to AI tools online. That will not be a recurring segment. But folks, that's going to do it for this episode of the Deeply Devoted Podcast. My thanks to Neil Hall and Dan Evans for joining me today. And I hope this exploration of myth and the magic of the movies wasn't too much of a nerd fest for all of you, but we sure had fun talking about it. And so we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. But until then, have a great week, and thanks for listening.
Next Tuesday, movies? Anyone?